Here is the fact nobody is saying out loud. In 2011, Goodluck Jonathan won the presidency, and the North voted against him in massive numbers. In 2015, a coordinated northern political machine removed him from power. And now, some of the very same political networks that dismantled his presidency are reportedly inside closed rooms asking him to come back. While everyone is debating whether Jonathan will say yes or no, nobody is asking the more dangerous question. Why do the people who ended his presidency now need him to save theirs? That question and its answer will tell you more about 2027 than anything Abuja's commentators are saying right now. Before we go further, if you are new to Naija Update 247, let me be straight with you. Every single video on this channel costs me real time, real money, and genuine research to put together. I don't take shortcuts, I don't do gossip, I go deep so you can understand what is truly happening. The one thing that keeps this work going is when you hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to me. Subscribe now and let's go deeper. Let us start with what actually happened. Reports have emerged through multiple political correspondents and Abuja insiders of a closed-door meeting involving northern political stakeholders, former governors, and senior party officials. The central agenda was singular: convincing former President Goodluck Jonathan to declare his interest in the 2027 presidential election. Now, this is not a rumor circulating on Twitter or WhatsApp. The meeting's existence has been referenced by credible Nigerian political desks, and Jonathan himself has pointedly not denied it. In Nigerian political culture, that silence is not nothing. That silence is a statement. So, who initiated this? The initiators appear to be a specific faction within the northern political elite, one that is quietly but deeply dissatisfied with the Tinubu administration's economic direction. We are talking about the removal of the fuel subsidy, the unification of the exchange rate, and what this faction characterizes as a marginalization of northern federal appointments, despite their overwhelming support for the APC in 2023. I want to be very precise here, because this point matters. This is not a monolithic northern position. This is a faction. And that distinction will shape everything that follows in this analysis. Why is Jonathan's name surfacing now, specifically? Because Nigerian political structuring begins approximately 2 years before any election. Party primaries, delegate mapping, zoning negotiations, these things are happening behind the scenes right now. Any serious candidacy must begin building structure today, not in 2026, not after Christmas, now. And in the current opposition landscape, Jonathan represents something that is genuinely rare: a known commodity with cross-regional name recognition, an existing donor network, and, critically, no fresh political debt. The PDP has not recovered its national coherence. The Labour Party's 2023 momentum has not translated into durable infrastructure. In that vacuum, Jonathan's name fills a space that no other opposition figure currently occupies. One more piece of historical context you must not overlook. In 2022, Jonathan quietly explored running under the APC, the very party that defeated him. That attempt collapsed. The fact that he is now being approached again through a different channel suggests that the people behind this movement have studied that failure. They are coming back more quietly, more patiently, more strategically. Now, before we go any further, I need to stop and address something directly. Most Nigerians assume Jonathan cannot run again because he already served as president. That assumption is legally wrong, and the people inside that indoor meeting know exactly why. Let me break this down precisely. Section 137, subsection 1, subsection B of Nigeria's 1999 Constitution, as amended, bars a person from running for president if they have been elected to that office twice. That is the specific threshold. Elected twice. Goodluck Jonathan was elected once in 2011. He was not re-elected in 2015. He was not impeached. He lost an election and left office peacefully. That is a single elected term. The legal argument, which has been engaged at the academic, commentary, and political advisory level, is that Jonathan is constitutionally eligible to contest one more time. He has used only one of his 2 constitutionally permitted terms. This is not a fringe interpretation. It was raised formally during the 2022 APC conversation, and no Nigerian court has ruled it out. INEC has not disqualified it. The legal path is open and contested, which is precisely the point. Because here's how INEC operates. It does not pre-screen candidates for eligibility. It processes nominations and responds to legal challenges. That means Jonathan could file his nomination, a rival party could challenge it in court, and the matter enters Nigerian judicial timelines, which, as we all know, can run well past an election season. That litigation process is not merely a legal mechanism. In Nigerian politics, it is a weapon. Keeping a rival tied up in court while you campaign freely is itself a strategic tool. Now, consider the PDP's structural problem. If Jonathan seeks the PDP ticket, the party faces an immediate internal crisis. Its zoning arrangement for 2027 is already contested. One faction says it's the North's turn to produce the candidate. Another faction says the party simply needs someone who can win regardless of zone. Jonathan's candidacy collapses that debate entirely, and in collapsing it, it may also collapse the fragile Northern-Southern coalition that the PDP desperately needs to rebuild its national relevance. Hold this thought. There's one actor in this entire story who has said absolutely nothing, and their silence is the most telling signal of all. We will come back to that before this video ends. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, I need you to drop a comment right now. Tell me your reaction before we get to the part that changes everything. And if you have not subscribed yet, I want to be honest with you. I put serious research into every video on this channel. Late nights, cross-referencing sources, cutting out the noise. The only way I can keep doing this is if this community grows. Hit subscribe. It is the single most powerful thing you can do to support this work. Here is the pattern interrupt that changes how you read this entire story. Jonathan's political weakness in 2015 was not his governance record. It was the structural abandonment of his campaign by people who had promised him their full support. Some of those same people are now in those indoor meetings. That is not loyalty returning, that is calculation. The question you must ask is, what exactly are they calculating for? Let us go through each player methodically.
Who benefits from this development? First, the northern dissident bloc within the APC. There is a faction of northern governors and senators who are quietly unhappy. Tinubu's economic reforms, painful as they may be, have hit the north disproportionately hard. The region is structurally dependent on federal allocation, food subsidy frameworks, and the old exchange rate regime. This bloc does not want to openly fight Tinubu. That is too costly and too visible. But they want a credible alternative ready as political insurance. Jonathan is that insurance policy. Second, the PDP National Secretariat. The party needs a candidate who can raise funds, command national media attention, and appeal across geopolitical zones without needing years of brand building. Jonathan is already built. His candidacy alone revives the PDP's relevance in a way no current PDP figure can replicate. Third, Jonathan himself. Think about his calculation carefully. If he runs and wins, he completes unfinished political business and returns to history as a redeemed statesman. If he runs and loses, he still re-enters the public record as someone who answered a national call with dignity. There is almost no scenario in which running damages his legacy further. That is an extraordinarily rare position for any Nigerian politician to occupy, and he knows it. Now, who risks losing influence? Atiku Abubakar. Atiku has contested the Nigerian presidency more times than perhaps any living politician. He is widely expected to run again in 2027. Jonathan's entry splits the northern opposition architecture because even though Jonathan is from the south-south, he would be running with northern structural backing. Atiku's entire 2027 strategy is built on being the only serious northern adjacent opposition figure. Jonathan's candidacy dismantles that positioning entirely. Peter Obi and the Labour Party also face a real problem. Obi's 2023 performance was concentrated in the southeast and among urban youth voters. Jonathan's candidacy pools south-south votes that might otherwise have moved toward Obi's coalition and fragments the protest votes that the Labour Party depends on as its core engine. The southwest calculation. This is where it gets personal. Tinubu is a southwest president. His 2027 re-election depends on a united southwest vote as its foundation. If Jonathan enters the race with credible northern backing, Tinubu's campaign machinery will immediately activate a regional solidarity message that allowing Jonathan to win means the Southwest loses its first presidency after decades of waiting. That message will land powerfully in certain quarters, but it will be contested in others, specifically among Southwest voters who are living the daily consequences of Tinubu's first term. Electricity costs, food inflation, the Naira's continued purchasing collapse. These are not abstract economic indicators. They are felt in every market, every household, every fuel queue across Yorubaland. Jonathan's candidacy, therefore, does not merely fracture the North. It creates a genuine dilemma inside the Southwest. Some voters will consolidate behind Tinubu as a matter of regional identity. Others will weigh their economic pain above geopolitical loyalty. The APC knows this. Jonathan's team knows this. And how the Southwest resolves that internal tension will be one of the defining dynamics of 2027. One more thing. The silent stakeholders. The Tinubu presidency has issued no official denial of the Jonathan meeting. No confirmation either. Aso Rock has allowed this story to breathe, and that itself may be strategic. A Jonathan candidacy that the APC appears not to fear is a Jonathan candidacy that opposition forces may catastrophically underestimate until it is too late to organize against it. Watch that silence from Abuja very carefully. A Jonathan candidacy backed by northern stakeholders creates an unusual coalition geometry that Nigerian politics has not seen before. A southern candidate running with northern structural support against a southwest incumbent. This inverts the power-sharing logic that has quietly governed Nigerian electoral politics since 1999. If that coalition succeeds, it does not simply change the precedent. It rewrites the unwritten zoning compact that has organized elite power sharing for a generation. State-level governors calculating their 2027 survival will be forced to choose sides far earlier than they would like. Fence sitting becomes more costly. Alliance networks that took years to build could fracture within months. The economic dimension is equally serious. Political uncertainty, separate from any election result, increases uncertainty for foreign direct investment, delays federal infrastructure decisions, and extends the period during which economic policy is subordinated to electoral strategy. For Nigerians already absorbing severe inflation, a prolonged pre-election political economy is not an abstraction. It is an additional weight on already strained households. There is also the interfaith dimension, and this is where I want to be careful and precise. Jonathan is Christian from the South-South. His 2015 defeat was characterized by some voices as having a religious dimension. That framing was contested, but it was never fully put to rest in the national conversation. If northern Muslim political figures are now backing Jonathan's return, that carries real symbolic weight. It signals that political calculation in this instance has overridden the religious framing some deployed in 2015. Whether that reflects genuine political maturity or purely tactical repositioning, watch how northern religious commentators respond to this story over the next few weeks. Their reaction will be one of the earliest honest signals. Now, here is the global pattern that almost no Nigerian commentator is making the connection to. Across West Africa, civilian governments that came to power on reform mandates are facing coordinated backlash from previously dominant political networks. Jonathan's courting is part of that regional cycle, the return of pre-2015 networks seeking restoration through electoral means rather than military ones. Nigeria is not an isolated case. It is the largest and most consequential node in a regional political pattern that is actively repeating itself. I want to be fair to the strongest argument on the other side because intellectual honesty demands it. The most emotionally resonant argument against a Jonathan candidacy is simply this: he already had his chance and he lost. Jonathan governed from 2010 to 2015. That period includes the peak of the Boko Haram insurgency, the Chibok girls' abduction that drew global attention, and significant corruption allegations, including the $2.1 billion arms procurement scandal, for which several officials were prosecuted. Supporters respond that Jonathan was not personally convicted of any corruption offense, that the security failures of that period were systemic, not individual, and that his voluntary concession of the 2015 election remains to this day the first genuinely peaceful transfer of presidential power in Nigerian history. They argue that concession alone is a form of democratic credibility that his successors have not matched. The second counter-argument you will hear, particularly from South-South voices, is this: the North cannot be trusted. They removed him once, they would do it again. That is a legitimate concern. The response from Jonathan's backers: Nigerian politics is never about permanent loyalty. The faction approaching Jonathan now is not the same political configuration as 2015. Interests change, and what matters is not the history of the relationship, it is the current alignment of incentives. Here is where mainstream media coverage is fundamentally wrong. Most Nigerian media are treating this as a Jonathan story. It is not. It is a northern political elite fragmentation story, and Jonathan is the vehicle, not the driver. When you understand that correctly, you stop asking, will Jonathan run? And you start asking the right question. What does the northern political establishment need badly enough to go back to a man they once discarded? That question leads you to the real analysis. And for the Southwest specifically, the question is not whether Jonathan is a strong candidate in the abstract. The question is what his entry does to Tinubu's re-election arithmetic and what that means for the Southwest's federal influence over the next 4 to 8 years. If Tinubu survives a hard-fought contest against Jonathan, his second term carries a legitimacy his first term never had. If he loses, the Southwest loses the presidency. Neither outcome is simple. Anyone presenting it as simple is not giving you the full picture. Earlier, I told you there was one actor in this story whose silence was the most telling signal of all. That actor is Jonathan himself. Not a denial, not a confirmation, a sustained, deliberate silence. In Nigerian political culture, at this level, that is the loudest possible signal that the conversation is real, the calculation is live, and the decision has not yet been finalized. His silence is not absence, his silence is active negotiation. Here is what to watch in the coming months. Watch whether Jonathan responds or continues not responding to direct media questions about 2027. That alone will tell you where his decision stands. Watch PDP zoning committee activity. Any formal resolution on candidate eligibility criteria is a direct signal about whether the party is preparing space for Jonathan. Watch which northern governors attend PDP events versus APC events in the second half of this year. Political loyalty in Nigeria is expressed through physical presence. Who shows up where tells you more than any press statement. And watch the Tinubu administration's economic messaging. If they accelerate visible wins, infrastructure completions, inflation relief narratives, social intervention rollouts, the timing will not be accidental. It will be a direct response to the political threat this meeting represents. We began with a question. Why do the people who ended Jonathan's presidency now need him to save theirs? Here is the measured answer. Because political power in Nigeria is never ideological, it is structural, it is transactional. The northern faction approaching Jonathan does not necessarily believe he was a great president. They believe he is the most viable available instrument for a specific current objective to disrupt a political settlement they feel has failed their interests. Jonathan may run, he may decline, but what is beyond question is this. The fact that this conversation is happening at all tells you that the 2027 electoral contest is already structurally more open than the political class wants you to believe. What happens in those indoor meetings will determine what happens at the polling booth, and now you know exactly what questions to ask. That is my analysis, and I want to hear yours. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This kind of research does not come easy. I spend real time and real resources pulling these threads together so you have clarity when everyone else has confusion. If this video gave you value, share it with one person who needs to understand what is really happening in Nigeria right now. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it now. It costs you nothing, but it is the single biggest way you can tell me to keep going. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.